Imagine a moment where two individuals, living in worlds separated by oceans, cultures, and destinies, unexpectedly find each other through simple words. One is Usain Bolt, the world's icon of speed, the fastest man on earth, whose radiant smile once shook Olympic stadiums. The other is Ibrahim Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso, a small nation in West Africa where desert winds carry both hope and harsh challenges. What compelled a track star, with the world at his feet, to sit down and write a handwritten letter to a leader grappling with political crises and poverty? And why did that letter become a small flame, igniting faith for millions across the globe? This is not just a story about two individuals. It is an inspiring journey about the power of compassion, unexpected connections, and the ability to change the world through seemingly small actions. Join me as we step into this story where words transcend all boundaries to touch hearts. Usain Bolt, known worldwide for his lightning-fast sprints, is more than an athlete. Behind the glow of gold medals is a boy who grew up on the dusty roads of Trelawney, Jamaica, where dreams were sometimes just a faint glimmer amid poverty. He knows what it means to run, not just to win, but to prove that he exists, that he matters. Across the ocean, Ibrahim Traoré, a man bearing the weight of an entire nation, stands at the crossroads of hope and despair. In a stifling office in Ouagadougou, he faces stacks of documents, reports of political unrest, and the oppressive heat of the African sun. As if nature itself is testing his resolve, the story begins with an unexpected moment, a letter, sent across thousands of miles, from sunlit Kingston to dusty Ouagadougou. That letter, with a Jamaican stamp on a pale yellow envelope, is more than a piece of paper. It is an invisible bridge, built with sincerity and respect, connecting two men who seem to have nothing in common. When Traoré opens the letter, he cannot imagine that Bolt's elegant words will touch the depths of his soul, causing him to pause amid the storm of responsibilities to reflect on the meaning of courage and hope. And when Bolt, sitting in his peaceful Jamaican garden, writes those words, he has no idea they will stir the heart of a leader in a distant land. In our divided world, where invisible walls of geography, race, and class seem to grow taller, this story is a reminder that genuine connection can work miracles. It is not just about an athlete and a president. It is about how a small act, a letter, can become the wind that fans the flame of change. It speaks of seeing each other, truly seeing each other, beyond differences, distances, and prejudices. Imagine this. If a single letter can do this, what could happen if each of us dared to send a message of compassion? What would happen if we dared to build our own bridges? The story of Bolt and Traoré is not just a tale, it is a call, an invitation to step out of our comfort zones, to reach out, to listen, and to run together toward a brighter future. As you enter this story, prepare to be swept away by emotion, to question what truly matters, and to find faith that sometimes all it takes to change the world is a letter and a heart ready to open. In a small room in the heart of Ouagadougou, where the heat of the West African sun seems to seep through concrete walls, Ibrahim Traoré sits behind an old wooden desk, surrounded by stacks of documents, each page carrying a fragment of the crises facing Burkina Faso. The air is stifling, only slightly relieved by the faint hume of an old air conditioner. Reports of political unrest, food shortages, and sporadic protest in the outskirts crash like waves in his mind, leaving his sharp eyes tinged with fatigue. It is a morning like any other, until his gaze falls on a pale yellow envelope lying alone among the papers. The Jamaican stamp in the corner, with a vibrant flower, seems out of place, a misfit in the chaotic tapestry of the presidential office. Traoré furrows his brow, his fingers brushing lightly over the envelope's surface, as if trying to guess what lies within. "Jamaica?" he mutters, his deep voice echoing in the quiet room. With the caution of someone accustomed to unwelcome surprises, he opens the envelope, and as the first lines appear, the world seems to slow. The elegant, bold, yet unpretentious handwriting belongs to Usain Bolt, the fastest man alive, a name synonymous with victory even in a remote nation like Burkina Faso, where his feats transcend human limits. "Dear President Traoré," the letter begins, and from there, each sentence, each word, beats like a pulse into his heart. Bolt does not write as a superstar, with none of the arrogance of someone who has stood atop the world. Instead, he writes as a friend, a man who once ran barefoot on the red dirt roads of Trelawney, Jamaica, where grand dreams jostled with the harsh reality of poverty. He tells of his childhood, when his only shoes were the dust on his feet, and how he learned that running was not just about outpacing rivals, but about surpassing himself. But what stops Traoré, what catches his breath, is when Bolt writes about him, about a leader he has never met but admires from afar. "I see in you a courage I could only dream of on the track," Bolt writes. "You run for a nation, for freedom, and for hope. That is the true race." Those words, simple yet profound, are like a cool breeze through Traoré's soul. He sets the letter down, his eyes drifting to the window, where Ouagadougou's dusty streets shimmer under the blazing sun. He thinks of his people, the women carrying bundles of millet on their shoulders, the children playing soccer on barren fields, and the men struggling daily to preserve dignity on the edge of poverty. Bolt, who has the world at his feet, has seen them, not through cold statistics or fleeting international news, but through the heart of someone who knows what it means to yearn for a better future. Across the ocean, in Kingston, Jamaica, Usain Bolt sits in his lush garden, where birdsong mingles with the distant sound of Caribbean waves. The night before, he wrote that letter, not out of ambition or external pressure, but from an inexplicable urge. He had seen a news report about Burkina Faso, about its struggles, and about Traoré, a young man with resolute yet burdened eyes, leading through a storm. Bolt, who has faced the pressure of the world on the track, recognizes that Traoré's race is tougher than any he has ever run. "I have to do something," he tells Marcus, his longtime manager, as he folds the letter and seals the envelope. Marcus, cautious as someone familiar with Bolt's spotlight, warns, "Are you sure? This isn't a race, Usain. This is politics, complicated stuff." But Bolt just smiles, his eyes on the horizon. "It's not politics, Marcus. It's about doing what's right." When that letter leaves Bolt's hands, it is no mere piece of paper. It is a message that transcends boundaries, geographic, cultural, and social. As Traoré holds it, he feels a strange connection, as if Bolt is writing not just to him, but to all the people of Burkina Faso, those the world rarely notices. He calls Alima, his assistant, a young woman with sharp intelligence and a passionate heart for her country. "Alima, have you ever heard of Usain Bolt?" he asks, his voice tinged with curiosity and surprise. Alima smiles, her eyes sparkling. "Of course, sir. He's a legend. But why is he writing to you?" Traoré shakes his head, not answering immediately, but inside, a spark of hope has ignited. That moment, when Traoré reads Bolt's letter, is a turning point. It is not just a personal act, but a reminder that in a divided world, there are still those willing to reach across distances, to touch one another. Bolt's letter, with its sincerity and respect, shakes Traoré's heart, making him realize that his race, for his nation, is not run alone. And somewhere across the ocean, Bolt feels the same, that his sprints, no matter how fast, only truly matter when they inspire others to keep running their own races. Under the dim light of his Ouagadougou office, Ibrahim Traoré sits in contemplation, Bolt's letter still on the desk, a weighty presence far beyond its words. Night has fallen, and the city's clamor has faded, leaving only the sound of wind through the window, carrying the desert's heat. The letter, with its elegant, heartfelt lines, has stirred a feeling Traoré rarely allows himself amid the storm of duties. But with hope comes a daunting question: how to respond? How can a leader drowning in a nation's crises write a letter worthy of the world's fastest man's heart? Troy picks up his pen, his fingers brushing the old fountain pen, a gift from his late father, who taught him that words, chosen well, can be mightier than any weapon. But the first words do not come easily. He starts, stops, tears up the paper, and tries again. Each sentence feels too small for what he wants to say, too fragile for what Burkina Faso endures. He thinks of his people, the farmers bent over parched fields, the children with bright eyes but uncertain futures, and the women whom he sees as the nation's heart, with calloused hands but resilient spirits. How to tell their story without slipping into despair. How to convey the belief that, no matter how thick the darkness, light always persists. Finally, after hours of reflection, he begins to write. "Dear Mr. Bolt," he starts, his tone formal yet unguarded in its sincerity. He writes of Burkina Faso not through cold statistics or dry political reports, but through human stories. He tells of the women in Dori village, rising before dawn to sow seeds in barren soil, singing folk songs to banish fatigue. He speaks of children in underfunded schools, where tattered books are treasured, and dreams of becoming doctors or engineers burn fiercely in their hearts. He does not shy away from the hardships, political instability, hunger, external threats, but emphasizes that, amid it all, Burkina Faso's people rise daily, dreaming of a better future. "We are runners," he writes, "not on a track like you, but on a path of patience and hope. Your story reminds me that each of us, no matter where we are, has our own race." As the letter nears completion, Traoré calls Alima, his trusted assistant, valued not only for her intelligence but for her passionate heart. Alima enters, her hair neatly tied, her eyes lighting up at the sight of the letter. "Sir, is this the reply to Mr. Bolt?" she asks, her voice mingling curiosity and excitement. Traoré nods, handing her the draft. "Read it and tell me what you think. I want it to be more than thanks. A message that we, though small, have a voice." Alima sits, reading each line with focus, and when she looks up, her eyes shine with pride. "It's beautiful, sir," she says, "but I think we should add a bit about our people's spirit, how they never give up, even when the world turns away." Traoré smiles, realizing Alima, with her youthful insight, has touched the core of his intent. He adds a passage about a village ceremony where hundreds gathered to sing songs of freedom, their eyes blazing under the moonlight. In those moments, he writes, "I feel not just a president, but a runner alongside them, on the same path." When the letter is complete, he signs it, seals the envelope, and hands it to a diplomatic courier, hoping his words will reach Bolt's heart, as Bolt's reached his. In Kingston, when Traoré's letter reaches Bolt, he is on his balcony, gazing at the glittering Caribbean Sea under the sun. The envelope from Burkina Faso, with neat handwriting and a simple stamp, is an unexpected surprise. He opens it, reads each line, and feels a surge of emotion. The stories of farming women, dreaming children, and the unyielding spirit of Burkina Faso's people leave him speechless. He calls Marcus and reads the letter aloud, his voice trembling with feeling. "See this, Marcus?" Bolt says when he finishes. "This isn't just a letter. It's an invitation. They're running, and they're asking us to run with them." Marcus, usually cautious, falls silent, his eyes reflecting respect. "I was wrong to think this was just a whim, Usain," he says. "You've done something greater than any medal." Bolt smiles, tucking the letter into a small wooden box where he keeps his most precious mementos. Traoré's letter is not just a reply, it is proof that small acts, like writing a letter, can create ripples across any distance. Traoré's letter, with its sincerity and the power of everyday stories, becomes a bridge between two men, two worlds. It is not just gratitude but an invitation for Bolt and the world to see Burkina Faso not only through its struggles but through its resilient heart. And in Traoré's heart, as he sends the letter, he knows he speaks not only for himself but for a nation, running day after day toward a future they believe one day they will reach. When Ibrahim Traoré's letter leaves Ouagadougou, carrying stories of resilient farmers and unyielding dreams, it does not just head to Bolt in Kingston, but, in a way, to the entire world. Those words, written in black ink on white paper, cross oceans, transcending invisible boundaries of geography, culture, and politics, becoming a small but fierce flame, spreading everywhere. In Burkina Faso, whispers of Bolt's letter begin to weave through dusty streets, from bustling markets to remote villages where electricity is a luxury. The people, rarely seen on the world's map, start murmuring, "Bolt, the fastest man alive, wrote to our president. He knows us." In Ouagadougou, Alima Traoré's assistant becomes a quiet witness to this spread. She hears stories from colleagues, street vendors, and her own family. One evening, entering the office with new documents, she sees Traoré rereading Bolt's letter, his eyes pensive yet bright, "Do you see, Alima," he says, his voice blending surprise and pride. "One letter from a stranger, and now the whole country is talking about it. They feel seen." Alima nods, her heart racing. A young woman raised in a challenging nation, she knows moments like this, when the world turns to Burkina Faso with respect rather than pity, are rare and precious. "Sir," she says, "this isn't just a letter. It's a bridge, and we're walking across it." Meanwhile, in Jamaica, Usain Bolt begins to grasp the power of the small act he started. Traoré's reply, with its vivid stories of Burkina Faso's people, shifts how he sees his role. He is no longer just an athlete, a symbol of speed and victory. He feels part of something greater, a story of connection, of using his fame to shine light on the world's forgotten corners. One morning, sitting with Marcus in a small Kingston cafe, he pulls out Traoré's letter and rereads a passage. "Listen, Marcus," he says, his voice full of emotion. "He writes that they're runners, like me, but on a tougher road. I can't stop at one letter." Marcus, who once doubted Bolt's decision to send the letter, now looks at him differently. "What are you doing, Usain?" he asks, not with skepticism but curiosity. "Trying to become a social activist?" Bolt laughs, but his eyes are serious. "Not activism, Marcus, just doing what's right. If I can make the world notice Burkina Faso, even a little, isn't that a bigger win than any medal?" Marcus nods, and for the first time, he sees Bolt not just as a star, but as a man with a heart big enough to change the world. News of the correspondence between Bolt and Traoré begins to spread beyond their countries. In Africa, local papers publish stories with headlines like "Bolt and Traoré, a story of unexpected friendship." In Europe and the US, journalists analyze the event as a rare case of human diplomacy, connection not based on power or money but on sincerity. An international magazine calls it the race of the heart, where two men from different worlds create a new legacy together. On social media, excerpts from the letters are shared widely, with emotional comments. "This is what the world needs. Bridges, not walls." In Burkina Faso, the stories spread brings a new breeze. People begin to see Traoré not just as a president, but as someone who brought their story to the world. At a community meeting on Ouagadougou's outskirts, an elderly woman, her face weathered but eyes blazing, stands and says, "If Bolt can see us, maybe the world will too. We are not invisible." Her words, simple yet powerful, ripple through the crowd, a flame igniting faith. When Traoré hears this from Alima, his heart pounds. He realizes that Bolt's letter and his own reply have done what political speeches or international campaigns could not. They make his people feel seen, respected. In Jamaica, Bolt begins sharing the story publicly. In a TV interview, he holds Traoré's letter and reads a passage, his voice trembling with emotion. "President Traoré taught me that true speed isn't running fast on a track," he says. "It's how we act to change the world." His words become headlines, and Bolt, already a sports icon, is now seen as a global inspirer of unity. He receives letters from fans, from Jamaican children to African students, thanking him for showing that a small act can spark great change. Alima and Marcus, though continents apart, are swept into the story. Alima sees her work as more than handling papers or schedules for Traoré. She realizes every small act contributes to the bridges she spoke of. One evening, at home, she writes a letter to herself, promising to keep finding ways to make Burkina Faso shine. Marcus, in Jamaica, changes too. He urges Bolt to expand his influence beyond sports into humanitarian projects. "You've opened a door, Usain," he says. "Now step through it." The exchange between Bolt and Traoré, though it began as a personal act, becomes a global phenomenon. It is not just about two men, but about how a small act, a letter, can spark faith, build bridges, and inspire millions. In Ouagadougou, people dream bigger, believing their story matters. In Kingston, Bolt realizes his legacy lies not in medals, but in the hearts he touches. And worldwide, the story reminds us that in a divided world, invisible bridges built with compassion and sincerity can be stronger than any wall. As the letters between Usain Bolt and Ibrahim Traoré become a global phenomenon, they do not stop at connecting two men or two nations, but begin sowing seeds of change, sprouting in the hearts of millions. In Ouagadougou, The sun remains harsh, but a new breeze seems to blow through dusty streets, carrying faith that Burkina Faso, though small, can leave its mark on the world. In Kingston, under shady trees, Bolt feels a new responsibility, not just as the fastest man, but as someone who can inspire dreams beyond borders. Their story, starting with a simple letter, becomes a legacy, proof that compassion and sincerity can change how we see each other and ourselves. Ibrahim Traoré, in meetings with advisors, begins mentioning Bolt not just as an athlete, but as a symbol of perseverance and unity. In a speech at an international conference, he stands before global leaders, his voice low but powerful. A man in Jamaica, thousands of miles away, wrote me a letter. He didn't write for fame or power, but because he believed our story, the Burkina Faso story, deserved to be heard. If one person can do that, why can't we build a world where every voice is respected? His words, broadcast globally, touch the hearts of those who never heard of Burkina Faso, making them pause and reflect on the power of unexpected connections. Traoré does not stop at words. He promotes educational initiatives at home, inspired by Bolt's story. He visits rural schools where children sit on worn wooden benches, listening to their dreams of becoming doctors, engineers, or even athletes. "Do you know Usain Bolt?" he asks, and their eyes light up as they nod eagerly. He ran not just for himself, but for those who believed in him. You can do the same. Run for your dreams and our country. Those moments, though small, plant in the children a belief that they are not invisible, that their dreams matter, and that the world, though distant, is starting to see them. In Jamaica, Usain Bolt does not let the story end with letters. He organizes community sports events, not just to promote athletics, but to raise funds for Burkina Faso projects. At a major Kingston event, he stands before a crowd, Traoré's letter in hand, and shares, "I used to think winning was crossing the finish line first. Now I know true victory is helping others start their race." The event draws international media, and the funds raised go to Burkina Faso for schools and clinics. Bolt, with his signature smile, tells Marcus, "See, Marcus, one letter can do more than we think." Marcus, now fully convinced by Bolt's vision, nods and says, "You're not just the fastest, Usain, you're a pathfinder." The story spread does not stop at two nations. In African schools, the tale of Bolt and Traoré is taught, an example of compassion crossing borders. In Europe and the US, NGOs use it as a call to action, urging people to build invisible bridges in their communities. A Paris teacher, inspired, asks her students to write letters to distant, admired figures, sparking unexpected connections, from new friendships to community projects. A Nairobi student, after reading about Bolt and Traoré, starts a club to support orphans, with the slogan, "Run for Dreams," like Bolt and Traoré did. Alima in Ouagadougou finds new meaning in her work. She joins educational and diplomatic projects, bringing Burkina Faso's story to international forums. At a workshop in Addis Ababa, she stands and shares, "One letter from Usain Bolt changed how we see ourselves. It reminded us that, though small, we can make a sound." Her words, simple yet powerful, earn applause, and she feels she is not just Traoré's assistant, but part of a greater movement, building bridges across cultures, generations, and dreams. Marcus in Jamaica changes too. He works with charities to expand Bolt's impact, not just in Burkina Faso, but in other struggling communities. "You've opened a door, Usain," he says in a meeting, "and now we must keep it open." Bolt nods, his eyes bright with new belief. He begins writing more letters, not just to leaders, but to young people seeking hope in darkness. One letter to a Haiti school inspires students to organize a marathon to fund books, and that story spreads, creating a chain of humane acts. The legacy of Bolt and Traoré lies not in medals or political speeches, but in how they inspire others to rise and act. In Burkina Faso, people begin believing their story matters, that they are not just numbers in global reports. In Jamaica, young athletes are urged to run not just for medals, but for those who need them. And worldwide, the story reminds us that greatness is not measured by what you achieve for yourself, but by what you help others achieve. Months later, as Traoré stands by his office window, looking at Ouagadougou's bustling streets, he feels a new energy in the air. He knows Burkina Faso faces many challenges, but the story with Bolt has given him and his nation a reason to keep running. Bolt, meanwhile, walks Kingston's beach, feeling the glittering sand underfoot, thinking of the first letter he sent. He realizes that whether the world remembers him as the fastest or not, his true legacy is the hearts he touched, the dreams he helped ignite. The story of Bolt and Traoré leaves a profound lesson. In a divided world, small acts, like a letter, can create vast ripples. It challenges us to ask, how do we use our privileges, be it fame, knowledge, or simply time, to lift the voices of the forgotten? How do we build our own bridges? And most importantly, how do we run together? This story, with all its beauty and strength, is a call to action, not just for Bolt and Traoré, but for us all. When the final words of the story about Usain Bolt and Ibrahim Traoré settle, what remains is not just a tale of two men, but a flame of hope, a reminder that in a divided world, small acts can create immense ripples. From a simple letter written in black ink on white paper, two men on opposite sides of the world built an invisible bridge, not just linking Jamaica and Burkina Faso, but touching millions of hearts. Their story, with all its beauty and strength, is not just a story to retell, but a call, an invitation for each of us to step out of our comfort zones, to listen, to connect, and to run together toward a brighter future. Pause for a moment and consider. If a letter from a Jamaican athlete can change how a nation sees itself, what could happen if each of us dared to send a message of compassion? If we dared to reach across distances, geographic, cultural, or simply the prejudices in our minds, to touch someone? The story of Bolt and Traoré is not about heroes with superhuman powers. They are ordinary people like you and me, but they chose to act, to see each other, and to believe a small act could make a difference. And that choice made them symbols of hope, unity, and the power to change the world. In Ouagadougou, the streets remain bustling, the people still face harsh challenges, but they carry a new belief that their story matters, that they are not invisible. In Kingston, young athletes growing in Bolt's shadow learn that running is not just about crossing the finish line, but about lifting others on their path. And worldwide, from Nairobi classrooms to Paris communities, this story has sparked humane acts, from handwritten letters to community projects, all starting with a simple idea: we are stronger when we run together. This story leaves us with a profound question, one Jodi Picoult, with her keen insight, would urge us to face. How do we use what we have, be it time, talent, or a moment of kindness, to build our own bridges? How do we see those forgotten, running on harder paths than ours? And most importantly, how do we dare to act, to believe a word, a gesture, or a letter could be the start of something greater? Imagine a world where each of us is Usain Bolt, not for speed, but for a heart ready to reach far. Imagine a world where each of us is an Ibrahim Traoré, not for power, but for the courage to tell our story and hear another's. That world is not a distant dream. It begins with the small choices we make daily. A smile to a stranger, a word of encouragement to someone struggling, or a letter to someone you admire from afar. These acts, though small, are the bricks of unity's bridges. The story of Bolt and Traoré does not end when the last letter is sent. It lives on in the dreams of Burkina Faso's children, in the strides of Jamaica's young athletes, and in the heart of everyone who hears it. It lives in you at this moment as you decide what to do with the flame of hope this story has lit. So stand up, act, and run, not to outpace others, but to reach a future where no one is left behind. Write your own letter, whether in words, actions, or heart, and believe, as Bolt and Traoré proved, that an invisible bridge built with compassion can change the world.